Well, we have two questions, and really they're one question because they're so similar. So we thought we'd handle both of them in one video. First question, what happened to the people that never had an opportunity to hear the gospel throughout history? For example, people in America before it was discovered. And the second question, very similar, says, I recently had someone ask this. What happens if someone from a remote tribe that's never heard about Jesus dies and comes face to face with God? How can a loving God condemn someone to hell that's never got the chance to either accept or deny Jesus?
I love this question, as sobering as it is, because it reminds me that I didn't deserve the gospel either. There's a long-form answer in Romans 1, but I think the heart of it is just remembering that all of us really have chosen to reject God. We've all chosen to sin against God, and He didn't have to save us. He chose to save us. So regarding those particular people, we've got an answer in Romans 1 and in Romans 2, beginning in verse 18 and going into 19, 20, and 21. He says that all of us, all mankind, have first in 18 suppressed the truth. And then he says in 19, what can be known about God is made plain to them because God has shown it to them. So the things that can be seen and discerned about what God is like, he's not hidden himself. He has revealed himself. And he says how in verse 20, his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So the idea there is that we can all just look around and know that whoever made all of this is worthy of our worship. So someone who insists that they don't believe in God, but then just marvels at a supernova in another galaxy or the texture on an ant's skin or something in creation, like we all do, is acknowledging openly that whoever made this thing has to be worthy of our worship. And we do that when we kind of exult in how wonderful creation is. And so he says in the end of verse 20, so they're without excuse. So none of us can say, as I think it was Richard Dawkins that once said, God, why did you hide yourself from us? None of us can say God hid himself from us. He made himself very plainly known. He's shown us through creation how wonderful he is, how worthy of worship he is. And it's us who have chosen not to render him that worship that he's due. So that's one side of it. We've all seen the beauty of creation, chosen not to give God the glory he's due. And then in chapter 2, he uses the words no excuse again in verse 1. You have no excuse, O man, every one of you who judges. For in passing judgment on another, you condemn yourself because you, the judge, practice the very same things. And we know the judgment of God rightly falls on those who practice such things. So what he's saying there is that we also show in that impulse that we all have to judge each other. You know, you get cut off in traffic and you want to honk at that guy and wag your finger at that guy. You hear of somebody doing something wrong, often nowadays on the internet, and we want to jump on them and shame them and do all kinds of. We do that kind of stuff. We judge other people because we know that there's a moral law written into the universe, and we're admitting that when we judge people. We're saying there's a moral law in the universe. You've broken it. People who break it deserve to be judged. That's what a judgmental heart does. And so we're admitting then that, yeah, we do know right from wrong. And when we do wrong, we are doing it consciously. And therefore, we do deserve to be judged. So his argument there, essentially, is that every one of us knows that the creator of this universe is worthy of worship. And every one of us knows that there's a right and a wrong, and those who do wrong deserve to be judged. And yet every one of us chooses not to worship God and to do wrong. That's true whether you've heard the gospel or not. And so that is why God, looking down from heaven, doesn't have an obligation to save everybody. And none of us can look up to God and say, I deserve for you to save me, because we've chosen to rebel against him. So the sobering answer for the person who never hears the gospel, it never makes its way to them, is that when they die, they won't be accountable for rejecting the gospel because they never heard it. But they will be accountable to God for choosing not to worship him, for choosing to sin against him. And God is just in doing that. As much as that's hard to picture, it's so good for us, so good for me to have to say it, because then I remember, that was me. And when God brought the gospel to me, I didn't deserve that, but he did. So he didn't save me because I deserved it. He saved me because he's really gracious and he's really been good to me. And that can humble all of us to remember that. It also drives us to bring the gospel out to everybody. We're all in need of it. We all need to be saved. And so if you're hearing this and you're a believer in Jesus, go spread that word. And if you're hearing this and you're not a believer, find a church that preaches the Bible, hear the gospel preached, hear it on here, and believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
What do you have to add to that, Paul?
Yeah, I think I agree at the understanding of Romans 1 and 2. That's also in Psalm 19, other places in Scripture that the heavens declare the glory of God, as proclaims his handiwork, and that it's gone throughout the whole earth, and that everyone knows. And I think that that understanding Scripture this way is the same way that missionaries have understood it throughout the ages, and that what drove people like Jim Elliot and William Carey, all those people who've gone across the world in very difficult circumstances to share the gospel with people who, to those kind of remote tribes, to the places where a whole nation or a group have never heard it, because they came to the same answer and realized, well, I must go. Somebody has to go and tell them. So later in Romans 10, that's pretty much what Paul says, where he's how. It says, verse 13, for everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. And then verse 14, how then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in him in whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? And how are they to preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preached the good news. I'll stop there. But just Paul's own burden for himself, someone who his desire, his goal was to take the gospel to places where it had not been heard before, going all the way to Rome and Acts, and I believe desiring to go to even to Spain, take the gospel further and further out. That should be our same goal, and not just simply definitely to the tribe that's never heard the gospel. But I thought, even with this question too, just how even in our own city, probably even down the street, it could be somebody who's never heard the gospel before, that we should be taking the gospel to that person too. It gives generally just gives an urgency to sharing the gospel, giving people that a chance to respond to the gospel. So that's about all I would probably add.
Yeah, we wouldn't be risking our lives like that to spread it if we didn't think people really needed it. Yeah. So they really do need the gospel, and we really do need to get to every corner of the earth and bring it there.